in 5, 4, 3. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, or at least welcome back to me. Sorry I've been away, I've been sick, and you probably can hear it in the sound of my voice. And sorry again if I make funny sniffing sounds or look gross or otherwise, or form. Today is episode 16 of the Daily Code, and we are going to be doing some more Icicle stuff. The last bit of Icicle for a while now, because we've been doing it quite a bit on and off. And so topics for next week are JavaScript and using JavaScript build chains and other sorts of awesome things. But for now, let's do some Icicle stuff. In fact, let's have a look what we're going to do. Let's do that. So last week, and I think on Monday as well, I was working on making a personal site with Icicle, and it was kind of, I found that I was doing a lot of the same code over and over, and I kind of didn't want to do that. So I thought I'd try and abstract a little bit of it away and, work on something reusable, and I gave it a stupid name and made some GitHub repos for it. And essentially, where we're at now is I have the beginnings of a framework that is reminiscent of MVC frameworks I've used before, and it's looking quite good, and I'm having a lot of fun doing it. And I thought I'd carry on with that and just show you what I have. G-Sound, if not broadcast active. Okay, cool. Okay, so what I did was I took the basic routing out of. Let me show you what the bootstrapping looks like. What I thought I would do is I'd split it up into 3 separate repos. The first would be basic framework code to get a nicer, or at least a more feature-rich API on top of Icicle code. So I've got this framework repo. Then I also have an admin repo because I want to have a bit of a CMS interface wrapped around this framework. So just a place to edit pages and blog posts and whatever. And then a website on top of that. And I haven't yet decided whether I want to have a REST and socket API as part of the framework, or if I want to have it as part of admin. And I'm kind of up in the air about it, because I want to have, I don't really know. That's the truth of it. I want to use a good ORM kind of thing and work out some asynchronous abstraction around it, which means something like Doctrine or Eloquent, and probably something like Concurrent to get the stuff to run in a separate process if it's expensive to do. Or maybe even just port some other library that does MySQL async and use that, probably. But I want to have I want to have richer sorts of models, like kind of a shortcut ORM, a very small layer between whatever's writing to the database and what the website's using or the REST API is using. And I don't know where I want those models to live, if I want them to live in the framework or if I want them to live in the admin. So that's kind of why I don't yet know where I want that API to sit, because I want the API to sit close to whatever database abstraction I have, because that just is really neat if it's close to that, and then everything else can just consume a REST API or connect with sockets or whatever. Anyway, that was a sidetrack. This is a file that serves requests. So when I start this off, what I'll do is I'll go on up and into here, and admin, and then I'll just start this up, PHP 7.0. Serve, I think it is. Okay, cool. So that starts that up, and then if I go to that, if I go to where this is configured, so if I check in config app.php, I can see it's port 8000 on 127.0.0.1. So I can go there, and it should serve. Okay, it's doing the right thing here. It's doing a not found request, and that's because where I got with it is that I didn't define any routes on it, routes. If I go to the route provider, or route provider if you're anywhere but New Zealand, I'm setting up the route collector here from Nikita Popov's fast route library, but I'm not adding any routes to it, and that's because I don't, if the REST API is within the framework, then I'll set some routes up here. Otherwise, I'll extend this in admin and set routes up there. So that's the plan for that. Anyway, it's supposed to say not found. And that's because if we have a look in application, in fact, no, I think it's server provider. I set the dispatcher up and I dispatch to the route collector, dispatch with the route collector, and then I return these things: yield response, yield cached view. Now, if you've missed the Icicle stuff, this might seem weird to you, and it's using generators, and it's an Icicle's based on generators, and you probably want to check out some videos in the Twitch archive, or when I get around to editing the YouTube archive. But basically, this is asynchronous code that looks like synchronous code, which is cool. It's cool, because it's a lot simpler for us to reason about. But at the same time, we can do really cool asynchronous things and have high concurrency. So anyway, the page that this is serving, if the dispatcher can't find a route, is error/404. And that's wired up to load the views error 404 page, which says, helpfully, not found. In fact, we can change this, and we'll have to restart the server so that it can load that back into memory. Holy moly, why is this not closing? That's scary. Why is this not closing? Okay, I'll just close that. Wow. Okay, admin PHP 7.0 bin serve. Oh, it's because it's still running. PSAFX PHP 7.0. Oh, I need to grab that. Okay, so that's the process that's still running. Pretty weird that just freaked out like that. Anyway, server restarted, crisis averted. There we go, not found 1, 2, 3. Now it's doing this interestingly, right? Before I show you how it's doing this, let me explain. I've implemented a bit of a service provider interface in this codebase that I've got here. The application is very slim. Right. When I show you this bin serve command, all I'm doing is creating a new application interface and giving it the root directory of this code. So at the moment it's referencing rink php-admin, and that's how it's getting to find this config file and views and public. But other than that, I just create a new application and run it. This application class, on construction, it sets up a new container and stores a bit of, basic pathing stuff. So it gets the base route, which in this case is, again, this admin folder. And then it says, okay, well, path/base, is that variable in the league container? Well, set that to the base route. And path/config, well, take the base route and append /config. So that's how it finds app.php, public and view, etc. Okay. You'll see it also says this container adds service provider. Now, league route is a dependency injection container. It's the modern equivalent of a singleton registry class. So if you ever did something like a singleton registry class, this is what you maybe want to look at in terms of upgrades. But it's a very simple concept. And if you've worked with Laravel, you've probably seen something like this. If you've worked with Symfony in the form of a website, you've probably seen something like this. It is something that you would share a single instance of, and you create class instances and you store them by key, or you store aliases to strings of class names. And essentially this dependency injection container resolves things. So you say, make me a new this, and it'll do its lookup and say, okay, I have an instance of this object with the this key, so that must be what's necessary. Or it'll say, okay, I have the alias this, and it aliases to the class that. So when someone says, make me a this, I need to make a that. And it'll do some interesting things aside from that, which kind of makes sense when we look at this. We're storing the key of path/base to something dynamic. We're storing 3 other keys to, again, more dynamic stuff. And we're using share, which in the league container point of view says, okay, I only want a single instance of this. So in the case of strings, it's not going to make much difference. But if we have something like a database connection, we say this container share database and give it an instance of that, It's never going to make extra ones, even though it may know how to. It's just going to return a single instance of that thing. That's what share does. It's like treating a normal class like a singleton, for instance, but without having to code that normal class like a singleton. There are other ways to store this kind of construction information in the container, and we may look at some of that. But the container, the leak container, has this built-in idea of service providers. So it allows you to specify classes that themselves create these aliases, these factories, these instructions to create instances of stuff through the container. And you may have noticed in the file list I have a few of them here. So let's look at examples of what the stuff does. Just a note, I create this new container and it's stored in a private variable, and any function that doesn't exist on the application class gets proxied to this container. So this is kind of almost a transparent decoration of the container. It's not a traditional decorator, but it's kind of like a transparent decoration. The run method gets the config file so that it knows where to serve this, where the server should listen to, and then it runs the event loop. Now this server is created, here you'll see this container get. We're getting an instance of the server through the container, and in this case it's going to be a shared instance because we only really want one HTTP server, right? So it's going to treat this like a singleton, even though it's not coded like a singleton. And if we go and have a look at the server provider, we'll see how that works. So these service providers, you have to extend abstract service provider in the case of the leak container. But when you do, then you can have this this register method, and whatever you declare in here, whatever you bind with container share or container add, will get run when you call this method here, this container add service provider. So you add a bunch of service providers, and all it does is run this method to register more things. But if you've used something like Laravel, or like Laravel, it's the best example I can think of, then this concept will probably be familiar to you, using service providers. And there's lots of documentation for this kind of thing. Now we create a server in a very similar way to how we've created HTTP servers with Icicle before. Usually you would have been used to seeing some route stuff in here. I've just moved that to a separate function, and that function returns a generator, so I can do yield this dispatch here, and it makes sense. It works. And I've moved the routing stuff here, which, I mean, you've seen this kind of stuff before. You probably haven't seen yield response, yield cache view, but I'll show you what that does in a little bit. We dispatch the request, and we load the stuff in. It's pretty cool. Okay, I've also set an error handler here, and I'm just loading a 500 error, but with the exception. I'm not actually using this exception yet because I want to have some kind of debugging state. But yeah, this is loading a 500 error view. And then lastly, I share the container, which share the server with the container, which basically means don't create more instances of this. Just refer to this every time someone says new server, or every time someone says this container get. Just return this instance. Okay. Now, what next? Response and cached view. If we go into the functions file, which gets loaded with Composer Autoloader. Ooh, I have unused things here. Let me delete those. I have this app function. You may have seen this a few days ago when I did this previously. It's just like kind of shorthand so that I can do this kind of thing, app-get. Anyway, it means that I can change how this is defined elsewhere in the application, and it won't break things horribly. Anyway, view does, again, this is something that we had similarly before, and this is the idea of making all this thing, making this into a reusable thing, is that I don't have to keep on repeating this code. I can just use what works from time to time. So we create a memory sync because new responses require that to be able to output stuff to the browser in an asynchronous way. We create a new view engine. This is like the league plate template engine. It's exactly that. In fact, it's not like it, it is that. We render the template and send that to the stream, and we wait for that process to complete, and then we yield the stream. So this is a generator, which the last thing, which resolves to a memory sync. Okay, then response. we create a new response instance. We accept a memory sync stream, so whatever we create with view, we give as the first argument to this response. It has a default status code and no headers, which it'll then merge on top of the correct stuff like content length and a default type of HTML. And then it'll yield a new response instance with these parameters. So it's the same as saying yield new response with those parameters, except we're going into the dependency injection container to create new instances of that. So we can extend that in other application code. There's also this cache queue thing, and this uses the in-memory cache driver that we created on Monday to store stuff in memory. So it'll read the view. In fact, I think, yes, it'll check if the view is already cached. If not, it'll create the view and store that in cache. So this will be a memory sync, stored in cache and returned. Again, it's a generator because it's got yield keywords and it's not wrapped in a coroutine. And it resolves to a memory sync, which is the view that was created and then stored in cache. So, a whole bunch of helpful methods to basically shortcut creating streams and responses and give a really slick interface to making reusable code for applications. And I'm really keen to use this to start writing real applications from it. And where I ended was in benchmarking. So I started setting up this code, and you may have seen this stuff, which is I'll resize that, which is the time that this happened with microsecond accuracy and how long since the last thing it measured. So the first thing it's going to say is starts at 0, but then the next thing, well, from loading to loaded, it took 142 milliseconds or microseconds. And then from that to getting to load the server. So let's have a look at this. It's an application. I debug here. So config loaded, that happens at 142. So loading to loaded, in other words, requiring this takes 142. I'm sure it's milliseconds, not microseconds. Anyway, so setting that in the container takes just 46, and then before loading the server, well, that's the point at which this executes, to after loading the server is that ridiculous amount. So I'm assuming that is, I don't know, I need to check how accurate this is. But anyway, this gives us a good way of measuring how much extra work happens when we start adding more steps into this. And I'm keen to dot this around the codebase. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to keep on adding these to key points in the server so that I can start measuring. But first I want to see if I can... I really can't exit this. That is so weird. Why does this process hang? AFX... pretty weird how this process hangs, but anyway. It's fine, I can just kill it. Oops. Probably want to be more specific about that? Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay, so let's dot this around the codebase a little bit more. Just so I can watch a few more things and work out why it's taking so long. Between starting the server and ending the server. In fact, actually, here's a good idea. Let's run AB on this. Yeah, I like that. So run for 60 seconds, concurrency of 100, and keep live connections. Let's see what this does. Let's see how slow this is. Dun dun dun! Now this is getting the not found view, which means... Wow, that is taking very long actually. That's taking super long. This is getting the not found view, which means the very first request to the server loads that view and stores it in cache. And then, because of the anti-stampede mechanisms in the cache layer, every other request while that cache is building gets put in a queue. And in fact, we can even look at that. Okay, this is where it's created, but where is the code to make that? Let's see, async cache. Okay, so get. Okay, while it's busy generating the cache, just wait. Oh, okay, cool. So there's anti-stampede stuff built into this, so it shouldn't create. Wow, that's pretty slow. But okay, it's taking a second for 50% of the requests. It kind of picks up. So it's about 2 seconds for 90% and below, and after that it jumps up quite much to maximum of 4 seconds. Now that's very slow, and to be honest, I don't know why. But it could be because the streaming is really taxing my system. I'm kind of hoping it's that. I don't think I'm running anything else that's particularly troubling. I am going through a VPN as well, but again, I'm not sure if that's slowing it down or anything. It does seem like an accurate time. It does seem accurate based on this first thing, though. Well, I don't know. Let's run it again and see. It seems very slow, but a lot of that can be just put down to the server that I'm running it on. I think what's more important is using it as a benchmark for how much things I add slow the server down. I think that's way more important, so that's what I'm paying attention to. Yeah, that's what I'm paying attention to. Okay, let's put some more of these, let's start some more of these throughout here. So, let's see. Dispatching and dispatched. So, okay, let's stop this again. Well, it's a little better. I'm not sure if it's. I'm actually not sure why it's relatively that slow. But let's kill and restart it. Wow, this is even more laborious than stopping it was before. Okay, make a request. Oh, we have some errors. Undefined function debug. Okay, I need to use this function. So this is a cool thing. Hey, using functions in namespaces. That's pretty cool. Okay, again, I'm gonna have to restart this. So let me work out what this process is. That's pretty terrible, actually. So, fresh, not found. Okay. So, it's dispatching it twice. Now, this is a thing that I've come across with Chrome. It seems that when I have debug console enabled and tracking network requests, it makes 2 requests every time, which isn't the end of the world. It's not so bad. What's interesting is that for this first request, it takes 1800 milliseconds, and for the second one, it just takes 113. And that's because this first time, it's generating the cache, and the second time, it's just loading. It's creating the view and generating it, and the second time, it's just loading that up from cache. So this is actually pretty good. The second time, the first one's to be expected because we just restarted the server, but the second time, it's actually not bad. Let's actually give a route. Okay, so for this we'll create a provider folder. Nope, not that. Source, new folder. Provider. Okay, and I'll just copy this because it's much the same. Route provider, and I'll give this a new namespace. So ring PHP admin provider. Okay, now I can do away with a lot of this. I still need to keep the route collector because that's what I'm going to extend. And this is actually pretty interesting. Anyway, we don't need to do provides. So provides is basically just a way for a service provider to say what classes it registers with the container, but we're not registering any new ones with this route provider. we do need to add a composer auto load for this. So I'll take the one from framework and just copy that, just change it a little bit. So that's what we want. Let's go in here and say auto load admin, and I'll auto load test as well, because at some point I'll write those when I'm feeling better about myself. Okay, so let's do that. Let's make an index page. Index.php. This is the index page. Yay! In fact, hello world, because tradition, right? With the lowercase h. Okay. Right. So we have that index page. Let's make a route. Now, how we do this is to say this. I think this is how we do it. Container extend, and we use the route collector class name because that's what the route collector is named with in the framework's route provider. And then we get an instance of this, so we can say collector. In fact, we can even type in this just to be super safe, and we can say collector add route get, because now we're catering for the home route function. And we'll just yield a response. Yield response. We'll have to alias this as well. Yield view. In fact, we can even load a cached view, because we're not giving any dynamic data to this yet. So we'll just say index. Okay. Now we need to use these as well. So let's have a look at. Let's have a look here. Just copy these aliases and put them in here. And we don't need view, we just need cache view and response. Okay, this looks okay. Let's see if this actually works. We'll need to go into admin. Oops, that's not good. Okay, and compose a dump auto load. And ooh, I did something wrong. Missing a comma there. Dump auto load. In fact, I even want to do a composer update because framework might need to be updated. This is using Composer's local file system requirements or repositories, which is pretty cool because I don't need to upload these changes constantly to GitHub. I can just make changes in the framework and then use them in the admin and keep going back and forth like that. It's pretty easy. Yeah, so while that's loading, we don't have this in here yet. I think I may need to restart the server again. I probably won't. Okay. Let's get that, and let's kill it. And there should be nothing more than there. Restart this. Not found. Oh no. What happened? Okay, that's taking a while. I'm sure it's because I'm on this VPN, actually. It kinda sucks. Anyway, Rink admin tests. Let's go back here. Rink admin provider. This looks right. What I may do is end up going to League, the PHP League. No! Go to phpleague.com. I'm just going to have a look and see the extends syntax here. phpleague.com, a great place to find high quality modules, PHP modules. Check it out. It's pretty good. Okay. API docs, hey. Let's have a look at factory closures. I don't actually see what I need there. what I want to see is how to extend definitions. So let's go to container interface, function extend. There you go, extend alias. That doesn't work. Okay, definition interface. That's not good. Extend. So it just returns the definition of how this was created. But callable definition? Resolve. Okay, I think it, well, okay. Let's just try with this then. In here, let's just say print definition. I just want to see this execute, and then I know that this code is working. In the meantime, how's this cool music, hey? Okay, I actually need to restart this. Why is this so slow? Oh my gosh, seriously. I think there's something messed up with my PHP installation or something. Now it's not loading this provider. Oh, obviously it's not loading this provider. What am I doing? Okay, then serve. Add service provider. I'm a fool. That's what I'm doing. Okay, use bring PHP admin provider, route provider. Add that service provider before you run. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, add that before you run. Right. So let's kill this again. Let's restart this. Oh, it's not running. Okay, I'll try and figure out why that's not running. I'm going to take a quick break and stretch my legs a bit. I'll be right back.